but I only have one question. Were you not entertained?
The 2025 NBA All-Star Game was a total abject failure. I thought it would be a long time before we saw anything quite as unifying as the basketball worldwide confusion we all felt when Luka Doncic was traded in the middle of the night to the Lakers. But the NBA this past weekend said hold my beer when it came to this All-Star Game and the essentially unanimous disapproval the game received from NBA fans and viewers. I genuinely do not know a single soul who enjoyed this broadcast, if you can even call it that. For years, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has been begging players to give more effort and play hard in the All-Star Game. They got rid of the old East versus West format. Didn't work. They even had the players draft their teams. Didn't work. They tried an alternate scoring system with the Elam ending. Didn't work. Once again, this year the NBA had its eyes set on a hopeful new way to get the players to play a little harder in one of the NBA's bigger annual calendar events. There would be 3 teams drafted by inside the NBA's Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal. All 3 chose their rosters accordingly with some themes to try to drum up some competitive fire among the players. Chuck had Team Worldwide along with a few Americans sprinkled in who ideally would want to show that basketball as a global game is a motivating factor. Kenny's young stars along with Jalen Brunson as a team you would think would have the motivation to prove themselves as next up in the NBA going forward. Finally, you had the old guard of Shaq's team of OGs headlined by LeBron who didn't even play, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. The 3 teams would face off in a tournament along with a rising stars team of rookies and sophomores that I'll get to later. And the craziest thing about this new format, it kind of worked. It felt like the players finally took it a little bit more seriously. We had some decently competitive basketball, a few moments, and a handful of fun plays. But it was the league along with the game's broadcast this time that failed the players during All-Star Weekend and not the other way around, oddly enough. To say there were a lot of ads during the NBA's 2025 All-Star Game broadcast would be an understatement. At times it felt like less of a televised basketball game and more like an infomercial with the occasional break for hoops sprinkled in. User u/forgetshane on Reddit posted a minute's breakdown of the 3.5-hour All-Star Game broadcast on r/NBA. From start to finish, the broadcast lasted 3.5 hours or 210 minutes. Can you guess how many minutes of that were just ads and commercials? I'll give you a second to guess. If you guessed 80 minutes out of 210, then give yourself a pat on the back. That's right, just over 38% of the All-Star Game's broadcast was dedicated strictly just to ads and commercials. And look, commercials are necessary to pay the bills, and they aren't all bad. I mean, look at the Super Bowl, an event that's widely known for the number of high-budget commercials included in its broadcast. According to a Statista survey back in October, almost 20% of Super Bowl viewers are only there for the commercials. Interestingly enough, I did some research and saw that the Super Bowl's broadcast, just like the NBA All-Star Game, was 3.5 hours or 210 minutes long. But somehow there were even more ads shoehorned and stuffed into the All-Star Game than there were during the Super Bowl. Earlier I mentioned that 38% of the All-Star Game broadcast was just ads and commercials. The Super Bowl's broadcast was only 24% ads, and the NFL actually has commercials that people actively seek out during Super Bowl broadcasts. But yeah, the NBA had almost 15% more ads than the NFL had in their broadcast of the Super Bowl. So you might be asking yourself, if 38% of the NBA All-Star Game's time went to commercials, where'd the other 62% go? A segment that only lasted 5 minutes but was so cringeworthy that it felt like an hour was when Mr. Beast came out to do a giveaway for $100,000 in a shoot-off between Damian Lillard and random mullet guy from the crowd, Jaren. It was blatantly obvious that most of the arena not only had no idea what was going on, but also who this Mr. Beast dude was. The NBA has steadily become an incredibly hot ticket, especially in big-time events like the NBA All-Star Game, and let's just say Mr. Beast's core audience of 13-year-olds were probably not able to get in the door when most of the tickets went to bigwig tech guys all around San Francisco, so there wasn't exactly a prime Stone Cold Steve Austin pop from the Chase Center when Mr. Beast showed up. The giveaway. This was a blatant attempt at creating an artificial moment. Our good friend Jaren was tasked with making a single logo 3 before Damian Lillard was able to make 3 from that same spot. Dame, being the nice guy that he is, was not giving it his all or going for the jugular to deprive this kid of $100K, which then led to an entire arena and worldwide broadcast basically watching on in hopes that Mullet Man Jaren would eventually make one of these shots and end our viewing misery. Seriously, it is cool for the guy who won the money, and I'm genuinely happy for him, but if the NBA really thought that this was the type of stuff that would hold fans' attention or increase viewership, then they might as well have put Subway Surfers or old Family Guy clips on the Jumbotron like it was brain rot TikTok content. This segment had zero juice from start to finish, including this awkward moment where Mr. Beast is completely ignored while begging Shaq and Kevin Hart to come over and give Jaren a pep talk.
You want to give him some motivation? Shaq, come on over. Or Kevin, someone give our guy a pep talk over here.
Believe it or not, there was actual basketball played during this event. Like I said before, it wasn't all bad, some good, some bad, but overall an improvement over recent years. The 3 games lasted for a total of 42 minutes of TV time, with only just over 33 minutes of actual game time action. Once again, that's right, there was almost twice as much time dedicated to ads and commercials during the NBA All-Star Game broadcast as the actual basketball games, which is what I would say is what 99.9% of viewers tuned in to watch.
Make some noise for Kevin Hart!
I love it. Look at that, Ernie. I'm so sorry I'm late, man. I know I was supposed to be out here earlier, but they insisted that I do that over-the-top, completely warranted entrance.
One of the things that NBA fans were probably not hoping to see a whole ton of screen time during the NBA All-Star Game was Kevin Hart. Hart, who at one time was one of the biggest comedians in the world, just doesn't have that same effect as a guest appearance as he would have had back in 2010. Between he and The Rock, Hart might just be one of the most overexposed celebrities in the world today and somehow garnered 22 minutes of camera time during the game's broadcast. For reference, Jalen Williams, Alperen Sengun, Evan Mobley, and Cade Cunningham only combined for 25 total minutes played / TV time on the night. The Kevin Hart segments felt dead on arrival and stayed that way throughout the night as NBA Twitter and seemingly the All-Star players looked like they were all questioning who this was even for. It was joke after joke that missed harder than a Ben Simmons three-pointer with plenty of air balls mixed in too. Here are just a few of the jokes, ribs, and bits from the broadcast for you to judge for yourself.
I couldn't hear what Charles said over the sweat on his lip. I don't want to see another big man shoot a 3. Sit him down.
And when the jokes bombed, we went back to old reliable for a lot of NBA coverage, which is just trashing the game and wishing we could go back to the old days.
SGA, get the ball, do work, clear it out, do what you do. You wore the mustard-colored sneakers.
In a league where the current landscape has an epidemic of former players trashing the current product, the last thing we needed was Kevin Hart over the arena intercom talking trash to the guys on the floor. But unfortunately, Hart wasn't even the biggest offender that night of dumping on the event.
I said I think we're going to win a championship, but I lied. We are going to win the championship.
Wow. Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Draymond Green worked as a studio analyst and didn't pull any punches on his thoughts about the new NBA All-Star Game, format, and how the Rising Stars didn't deserve to be playing on Sunday night.
Candace goes, I'm coaching some team. And she's right. Some team that no one wants to see.
Oh, man.
I can understand the perspective of not wanting the Rising Stars as part of the main event game, but truly, Draymond and his generation of players are the reason the Rising Stars are even involved. Although it was funny to hear Draymond say this when one of his Warrior teammates is Trace Jackson Davis, who was on the Rising Stars team. I mentioned earlier the league grasping for straws to try to motivate the players to play harder, and this is something they attempted with the idea that it would make that happen. Draymond went on to express that having the Rising Stars out there wouldn't be any more motivating for the OGs, and what they really needed was to increase the payout for players who participated in the game. Thankfully, Jalen Rose was there to express how I would bet most fans felt about that statement.
Up the money, Dr. J and the big O want to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. They played 50 years ago. That's not our fault.
Unfortunately, we don't have Oscar Robertson's response to that last statement, but he did fire back at Draymond's recent comments of calling the current game product boring.
Draymond said so much, who cares what Draymond says? It doesn't mean anything. People, this is what I mean, one guy can say this and one guy can say that. The game is what it is. People either like the game or they don't, and I think people enjoy the game, especially if their team can win. And you look at the basketball, it might be boring to him because if he's not passing the ball to Curry, what is he doing?
I agree. Triple single is
not to single that out because I think he knows how to play basketball, but he's passed his ball to Curry more than anyone I've ever seen in basketball.
I think the Big O put it best, and I agree. Draymond should stop talking and go back to doing what he does best on offense, and that's passing the ball to Steph and getting out of the way. Maybe this is a topic for a different day in a larger video, but I'm truly perplexed as to why the NBA and TNT prop up Draymond on these broadcasts. Draymond, who's a tremendous player and a no-doubt Hall of Famer, but has to be one of the most universally disliked players in league history who does nothing but hate on the game and younger players. I just can't see how that would be a voice that hardcore or casual NBA fans outside of San Francisco and Oakland would want to hear from on any broadcast. Draymond is just the tip of the iceberg, but overall I think the NBA needs to be more protective of the game as a whole when it comes to broadcasts and stop allowing so many former players to scream to the entire world just how much they seemingly hate modern basketball. I'm not saying they should only pump sunshine and rainbows into the product, but I think the NFL does a much better job at this and hyping up regular season matchups like they're big time games. Meanwhile, the NBA has seemingly fallen asleep at the wheel, forgetting to put the Thunder on Christmas, and for over a decade now allowed rings culture and media coverage to essentially say the regular season doesn't doesn't matter, which has led to the players not taking it as seriously and putting us in the position that we are in now today.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Speaking of protecting the game and former players trashing the modern game, I don't think the original Inside the NBA crew did a great job with this either. Between Shaq going on and on about Bull, or him saying that LeBron, Steph, and Durant are all still top 5 players in the year of our Lord 2025, there was an obvious disconnect from the current state of the game and a ton of takes nobody wanted to hear about from Dr. O'Neil. We all love Inside the NBA. That 4-man combo will likely never be topped again in sports for a studio show. But unfortunately, recently they've fallen off and it hasn't been graceful. What was originally a super charming, funny, and lighthearted way to consume the NBA has now morphed into basically old men shaking their canes at the cloud with nothing but the same tired old ring talk, how players now are the worst, how back in the day the game was better, and overall a panel that doesn't seem like they really even keep up with the games they're covering in studio. This has been a truly heartbreaking development for NBA fans like myself, where it feels like seeing your childhood dog get into their elder years and turn mean. For whatever reason, we paused one of the All-Star games to honor Chuck, Shaq, Ernie, and Kenny, which is totally cool, but why now? Inside the NBA might be ending on TNT, but it isn't over. They're just going to a new network next season, and on top of that, not only will TNT host more games this season, but they also have up until the end of the Western Conference Finals to send this iconic 4-man group onto their version of Gone Fishing until the 2025-2026 season. At this point, I don't know if there is a fix for the NBA All-Star Game or if we're just too far gone, but I do know the Adpocalypse and Kevin Hart one-man comedy show that we just saw is not the answer. Nostalgia is a crazy super strong drug that can absolutely rewrite history. Don't get me wrong, the All-Star Game is in a bad spot right now, but let's not act like we were getting masterpiece 5-star classics at every All-Star weekend up until the last 10 years or so. At the end of the day, all fans want is an interesting and entertaining basketball product that showcases the best players and the biggest stars in the game today all interacting. I understand that I've criticized a lot about the league and the All-Star Game here, and you could say that makes me no different than some of the talking heads I complained about throughout this video. But I'm not some doomer when it comes to the All-Star Game who thinks it's all over and almost wants to see the game fall off even more. That could not be further from the truth. I grew up watching the All-Star Games and loved them, and all I want to see is this event get back to where it should be as something that hardcore and casual fans can watch together and enjoy every year with some entertaining moments and some solid basketball from the best players in the world today. But what do you think? Did you enjoy the 2025 NBA All-Star Game? Do you agree with my takes here? Disagree? And how would you fix the All-Star Game if you were in charge? Let me know down in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to my channel so I can keep making fun basketball content like this for all of you, and hit that notifications bell so you never miss out on any of my future uploads. And as always, until next time, thanks for watching.